Welcome on inside yet another edition of the Business of Social podcast powered by SCN Digital. My name is David Brickley. Each and every episode, we walk you through the ever-changing digital social marketing landscape. This show is no different. And I bring on my producer, KG. KG, little ticket, what's going on? How you feeling today?
Hello, I'm doing well. How are you doing?
We're doing good. So I know you and I were chatting a lot over the last couple of weeks about just the news and all the changes in our industry, which is pretty insane. I did want to start off the show, I guess more on a somber note. What a heavy week, not only for us, but for the whole nation, the whole globe potentially. But, I wanted to bring this up because I think it's so apparent to all of our listeners because your team are humans and all of us humans are going through these different emotions. So, of course, you know what I'm talking about at this point in time. We saw 19 children tragically murdered along with 2 adults in Texas, the last school day of the year for those children. And then you had, of course, the gunman in Buffalo that killed 10 people in a predominantly black neighborhood. We had our event here in Southern California, close to our headquarters here in San Diego. But in the LA area, there was an Asian American man that died at a lunch reception at a church. And then there was 5 other citizens wounded. And later they found out that was a race attack or, the shooter was targeting Taiwanese people. But man, they keep on coming over and over and over again. And I bring this up because it's tough to be a leader right now. I know there's so many CMOs and directors that listen to this podcast. And it's like, what do you do? Like, what do you say to your team? You feel hopeless, you feel helpless. And then you feel for all the parents out there, even on the STN team as well. I said the very next day you're dropping your child off at school at 8 a.m. And it's just like, I know a lot of our folks internally were dealing with it and we all just have had heavy hearts with it. So the only thing I'll say is, what I've learned is I think it's important to be transparent with your teams and let them know that, you're hurting as well and to be transparent. But, we at STN, we ask everybody on a weekly basis. I've been sharing this with a lot of my colleagues, KG, because a lot of my colleagues have been asking me, what do I do in these situations? But, and I'd love to get your thoughts, being an employee. But every week we ask our team how they're feeling on a scale of 1 to 10, mentally, emotionally, and physically. And even in a normal-ish week, when it's not a tragedy going on, I think it's so helpful to kind of get that pulse. And I know, KG, you've led a team as well, and you've gone into our software 15.5. I guess you can do this in any type of medium, I guess. But 15.5 is an HR software we use, and we poll our team every Friday. How you feeling mentally, physically, emotionally? And as a manager, as a leader, you can actually dive in quicker when people are just going through it. Give them an off day, give them a mental health break. But I mean, you've been a leader of a team as well, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on being able to get that real time feedback. I think it's really helped us, dive in and help folks that are in need.
Absolutely. I think it just makes it more accessible where sometimes somebody might not feel comfortable going to you directly and saying, hey, I need a break or my mental health is not in a good space. But because it's so easy, it's a survey, basically, you can just go in and say how you're feeling. And then your manager can say, hey, wow, I noticed that your pulse was like a lot lower than usual. What's going on? Can I help you? And that's actually happened to me since I've been here. And I know for sure mine this week will be lower than usual. And I'm sure my manager is going to see that and know what's going on.
I think the psychology of the written survey response opposed to literally calling your manager saying, I'm not doing well today, that's a really tough thing for an employee to do. Especially like in Western culture, it's all about work, grind. And the likelihood that someone is self-aware enough and has the goal to call their manager and say, I need a break, it's pretty rare. I mean, that's probably not going to happen. So what do? They try to roll their sleeves up and grunt through it. But especially, working, I've heard this feedback and I feel this way too. I mean, working in social media in particular, you can't really take too much time off because you missed the latest trend or you missed the latest algorithm update. But then you are just susceptible to the doom scrolling and you're susceptible to all the news and all the updates. And, when you're trying to put your head down and finish a deck, you don't want to hear 17 updates on, what's going on at this school and parents crying and photos coming out. Like, it's really difficult to deal with. So I say all that because not to say anybody has the answer, but I do think as leaders, it's our responsibility to talk about what's happening in the news, like share with your team that it's okay to not be okay right now. And then whether it's through, more like a survey like we do, or just, asking your team on one-on-ones, asking them how they're doing, because I think, it's the people that are going to, run your business. At the end of the day, if the people aren't doing well or they're not in the right mental frame of mind, they just need that break. And it's just been a lot is, COVID, Black Lives Matter, Capitol insurrection, the hits keep on coming, I think, in a very, very unfortunate way. So here's hoping that we get some levity and some break from all this madness in the future. But I did want to just start off with that, because if that can provide any value to at least one listener out there, because I think you just don't know what to do as a leader. You're hopeless, you're helpless. You don't say anything at all, which may be the worst thing you can do, because it seems like you have no idea what's going on. You don't know how your team's feeling. So hopefully some tips and tricks you guys have done, and obviously you guys can use with your team. But that being said, there's no easy transition for that, but a lot of stuff's been happening in our industry as well, KG. So I know we've kind of gone back and forth in Slack. I'll throw it to you to kind of remind me of some of these news items that we wanted to touch on here on the pod.
Absolutely. So the first one wanted to flag and get your take on is Netflix cutting 150 full-time jobs.
Yep.
In reaction to their slowing revenue growth and the loss of subscribers in this most recent quarter. And a lot of those folks were contractors who worked in social media. So definitely wanted to get your take, what you think of that, and if this means we have an influx of talent and where those people go from here.
Yeah. So, the first reaction for me is, I think, Netflix has had historic rising numbers and revenue for a decade now. You can't just have, 100 years of amazing revenue growth, amazing subscriber growth. And I think what's happened too is originally Netflix, what was it? $6.99 or something. Now it's like a lot more than that. But when Netflix first came out, you can save a lot of money. It's like $120 for my cable box, or I can cut the cord, pay $9.99 or $7.99 for Netflix, and just not have cable and save my, $113 in extra cash a month. That's really no longer possible, because now all the creators have pulled their stuff off Netflix. It started with Marvel and Disney, The Office, Friends, and all these different things that kind of started pulling off the platform. And those production houses and/or networks created their own. NBC creates Peacock, right? Disney creates Disney Plus, Hulu, obviously, with FX and all those different things. So what happened was Netflix dominated the market. They had 100% market share. Anything you ever wanted to watch was on Netflix. The networks start pulling off their content. So what does Netflix do? They double down on original content, the Squid Games, the Ozarks, etc. So, I looked at this earlier today or this morning. They're spending $17 billion in 2021. It's estimated they'll be right around there, maybe $20 billion in 2022. So what they did is, as people were pulling stuff off their network, they were adding in billions and billions to get those Squid Games, to get those Ozarks, to get House of Cards, all those different things that were original. But then at some point, it just doesn't, the influx or the chart starts to go down. And I think, it's not that surprising to me, because again, you just can't have 15, 20 years of amazing subscriber growth. And I think they've kind of reached saturation, maybe, especially in the United States. If you don't have Netflix at this point, you're probably not going to get Netflix. So now what's crazy is they're looking at things like, do we start running ads? Do we start, locking down passwords, things like that? And the balancing act is, as revenue slows down, you need to cut costs, but then you need to still grow subscribers. So it's like pumping the brakes and stepping on the gas at the same time. You want to save money, but if you don't continue to invest in the Squid Games of the world, you can't attract subscribers. So it's a tough place to be in. But yeah, Netflix down 70% so far this year. You can make an argument that, that stock was bloated during the COVID times. But yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting what's going on in the space right now. Obviously, their stocks holders start to sue and things like that. So what's really tough as a business owner is to operate on a quarter by quarter basis. If STN had to report quarterly numbers, like, there's quarters that we do really well and quarters that maybe aren't that impressive. But at the end of the day, it all shakes out at the end of the year. But when you have to go on those quarterly calls, the stockholders get mad. You have to immediately have a remedy. And the remedy for them was to cut some jobs.
Yeah, I can't imagine having to be out there reporting on everything at all times. I just feel like you'd be under such a microscope and then have to be so reactionary versus like really looking at long-term and seeing where we're going. But shifting gears, another kind of crazy thing happening with like the economy and stock market was a warning that was issued from Snapchat's developer, which caused their shares to start crashing, which to me was kind of surprising because we saw this like uptick for Snapchat, and all of a sudden we're going down. So like, what does this mean for us in social? What does it mean for brands, platforms in general? Because we could see advertisers start to curb their spending there.
It's really interesting. So, as we work with all these larger brands, and you can probably speak even more on this, KG, in recent time, Snapchat just doesn't get brought up a lot in our conversations. Like, obviously, it's great for Gen Z. I look at it more as that messaging platform for Gen Z, more so than a huge content push. Snapchat would disagree with me probably. But, all we hear right now is TikTok, and now people are starting talking about Discord. And what can we do on Twitch? And obviously you have your main players like the Instagram and Twitters and of the world. But, all we're hearing right now from our side of the fence as a social media first marketing agency is how do we launch our TikTok? How do we put more content on that? How do we leverage Discord? And it's very, Snapchat is more probably boots on the ground, and that makes a little more sense for like a remote agency with a lot of our partners. But I mean, you could probably speak to that. I just don't hear Snapchat a lot where brands are really want to show up there. Where I do think, when you were at the Atlanta United back in the day, and even like when Snapchat first came out, everybody was talking about how do we do Snapchat originals? How do we, launch these accounts? So it's kind of interesting, at least how brands are showing up on Snapchat for me.
Absolutely. I think too, there's such a younger demo on there that when I was at Atlanta United, we thought, okay, can these people actually purchase tickets? No, it's going to be their moms and dads who are going to actually be able to drive revenue. Mm-hmm. So where is it like the long-term value? Do we see this being something where these people are going to start at age 9 and continue through our funnel for like decades from now? Or is it something that's going to fizzle out? Personally, I'm not a huge fan for like a marketer to use Snapchat.
Yeah. So listen, at the end of the day, all these kind of stories are similar in a way. Netflix, Snapchat, the stock market going down. When you pump $2 trillion into the economy, what goes up must come down. It's like that teeter-totter, right? We're going to put $2 trillion over here. Well, what happens? Everything went up. The stock market was historic highs. Everybody was giving money to everything. People are buying, houses cash. Now the interest rate goes up to try to balance that act out. And then you have the Ukraine, obviously, situation happening. And then with the stock market, you have advertisers maybe being a little more frugal with their spending, which affects So, it all makes sense in terms of when you put that, after we get through COVID, we really, I guess I would say the recession should have happened during COVID, right? All these companies, not so much, social, Netflix, they probably actually had more user growth and more people flooding to their platform. But during the recession, when everybody was told to go away or stay home, that's when you probably would have saw the recession. But we kind of stayed off that recession by pumping money into the market. And now, again, what goes up must come down. You kind of like delayed the inevitable. At some point, there's going to be a correction. You're seeing that with real estate. You're seeing that now with stocks. So, obviously, there's going to be kind of a time here. It's going to be depending how long this lasts. But I think with every company up and down the board, they're all kind of reporting this. But Snapchat says that this is still a huge part of a significant investment year for us. So they plan to add 500 additional employees. So again, all these companies are like, we need more subscribers, but we have to cut costs, but we have to increase costs to get more subscribers. And I think Snapchat kind of feels the same way. So it's going to be interesting to see how everything shakes out with the stock price and how these companies do this. But again, I also feel like with these quarterly reports, they report something that's not ideal. They say whatever the stockholders will do to kind of keep them at ease, and they keep on running business as usual. So we'll see if they actually make these huge swings based on their market cap utilization going down. But ultimately, I think every company right now is just kind of struggling with every stock is down across the board.
Absolutely. And then I did want to shift gears to one of, I think, our shared favorite topics, because we both love the NBA and basketball.
Yep, of course.
But playoff ratings are up despite your Lakers not being in it.
So. Of course, yeah. Why would you want to watch the Lakers? That's I don't even watch them. No, but I think this is interesting, right? Because I was actually talking to a colleague over at the NBA, and I didn't really think about this until, honestly, a few weeks ago. But, as being a basketball fan, you had your Kobe's and your Duncans and the KGs, the Kevin Garnett's era, that transitioned over to, Melo and Chris Paul and LeBron James and Kevin Durant, Westbrook. And now there's this new generation of players that you still think you were reliant on the Durants and the LeBrons, but now you have the Luka Doncic, you have the Ja Morants, which, by the way, from a social media perspective, Ja Morant is just killing it across the board on, NBA Bleacher Reports of the world. Like they're one of the number one stars. But Luka, people calling the next Larry Bird. Obviously, Steph Curry always gets ratings. So you have LeBron out of the playoffs. You have Kevin Durant that doesn't make it past, actually gets swept in round one. Kyrie Irving's out of the picture. But all these new, really young stars, I think John Morant's, 22 years old? Kind of reminds me of a Derrick Rose in a sense. But the NBA is doing really well. I think the overall, through the early conference finals matchups, it's up 14% compared to 2021, which is huge. And of course, NBA had that $24 billion deal with ESPN and Turner. That ends in 2024-25. So as all these folks continue to rise, it's just going to be great for the NBA. So loving what they're doing.
Absolutely. And then one of our last things in the sports world we wanted to talk about is Tom Brady's new deal.
Yes. So this set the industry afire for sure. If you haven't heard, 10 years, $375 million deal with Fox. Just so you know, he's made roughly $296 million in his 20-year NFL career. So this Fox deal immediately allows him to make more money than he did. His contemporaries in the space, Aikman and Romo, make about $18 million a year from their respective deals. So yeah, I mean, Brady is setting up for after I retire, I can go right into the booth. I think, what is Tom Brady worth? And when you look at all the things that Fox can do with Tom Brady, by the way, another stock, story where Fox reported earnings that weren't as amazing as they wanted to. But oh, by the way, we just signed a 10-year deal with the GOAT, and the stock, market kind of shifted with that news. So it's interesting what's happening in the space right now. But ultimately, I think what is Brady worth? He has so many options. He has his different companies. He can be a part owner of a franchise. He can do whatever he wants to do. So is he worth $37.5 million? Well, that's what it would take to get Tom Brady to get a part-time job at Fox. So it's the market is the market in that regard. But keep in mind, Fox has Tubi, their streaming platform. Fox has their linear networks outside of just Sundays. So they're going to cut some deals. You saw Man in the Arena with ESPN, his documentary. He wants to create content like that. ESPN has done that with Peyton and Eli, where they were creating original content. That went over to the Manning cast. So it's not just him on the 1 p.m. window on NFL on Fox. You can use Brady in so many different ways. And as a colleague told me, do not underestimate the power of bringing Tom Brady to an Anheuser-Busch advertiser meeting for a dinner and seeing if that closes the old deal for the $100 million, presenting sponsor, whatever it may be. So having Brady in your back pocket purely from a PR publicity, shaking hands with the big pocket makers in New York is pretty important to their business. So at first it was kind of shocking, but as you dig deeper, you're like, listen, if they're going to spend billions and billions of dollars on NFL rights, I saw a great analogy about this. If you're going to have a $25 million mansion, you're probably not putting Walmart furniture in that mansion. So Tom Brady is the $37.5 million per year. Just amazing sofa you could put there in your living room.
What an analogy.
Yep.
David, I know we were talking a bunch on Slack about the future of social and where things are going. What are your thoughts? Well,
yeah, I know, I told you, KG, don't let me forget about this. I wanted to just end the mini pod with this statement. But no, what's interesting is I'm confident that if you're working in social media right now, the content that is working is more of that raw selfie type content, right? When you look at TikTok, it's usually you see a person's face even for a split second before you get into the content. So where before you had the infographics and you had the motion graphics, not to say that content isn't working anymore. However, TikTok kind of pushes that in the algorithm. Instagram is clearly copying TikTok, so their algorithm and Instagram Reels is pushing that. And how are you good on Instagram Reels or how are you good on TikTok? You need to have timely content that is able to capitalize on trends, on sounds, on whatever's happening across that platform. So what's really interesting is that STN, we are a content house. You dream it, we can create it. We've created all types of content from documentaries and linear commercials down to motion graphics, Instagram stories, whatever you want to say. However, the content that is now working is talent facing. So for example, if you're Coca-Cola and you want talent facing, really fun, trendy content, well, how do you do that? Do you hire a trendy TikTok person that can do it? Or would you ask STN like, hey, can you guys just like make us look cool on social? So what's kind of funny is we never really sold ourselves as this this solution, but our clients started asking us like, well, you have like a diverse set of young Gen Z, millennial, cool people. Can you make us cool on social? Can you make us genuine and authentic? And now with these larger brands, that's starting to happen with us anyway. And I'm sure you've seen this too, KG, when you were working on the account side where, hey, we need this raw, timely, fun, cool content that's authentic. Can you guys just record a selfie style video at the office, at home, whatever it may be? And that's the content that's going viral.
Absolutely. And I think it stays so true to the brand. It's so authentic and it's not overly produced. So it comes off more genuine because you're not going through all that overproduction for those pieces.
So yeah, it's either you need to have a group of influencers, ambassadors, you need to hire people that specifically want to be talent facing, or you work with someone like us, like, hey, can you make my brand cool? Because you have 95 in my opinion, the coolest people in the world that can be that talent facing. Because if you're Coca-Cola, the director of marketing, the senior marketing manager, the CMO, they probably don't want to be the face of the brand. They probably don't want to be on TikTok and know all these trends. And more than anybody, you have to move so quickly with these different trends, whether it's day in the life or sounds or what have you. So I wanted to share that with the audience because it's something we're seeing where it's like, well, I've actually had brands say, how can we launch a TikTok? We don't have anybody to be our face. We don't have anybody to be the face of our brand. Like, well, either we could do it, or I would suggest listeners out there, you got to find ambassadors or maybe a group of influencers you can send swag to or what have you to create this content. Even if they don't post on their feed, you can use influencers to only post on your owned and operated. They don't necessarily have to use their audience or do something that's inauthentic with their audience. So just an interesting shift I'm seeing. And I think now from an STN standpoint, we're like, hey, we can be the face of your brand on TikTok, which is something that I never would have probably thought of to put in a deck or what have you. But our clients kind of allowed us to stumble into that. So that was pretty cool. So anyways, I hope this podcast was helpful. A lot of stuff happening in the news. Obviously, starting off with a somber note, but hopefully just that leadership lesson of like, can I just talk about the elephant in the room? Can I speak to it's okay not to be okay for your team? And then be able to dig in and ask them how they're doing to really make sure, again, take care of the people, the products, and the profits. In that order is one of my favorite quotes. But anyways, let's wrap it. So that was our mini podcast edition. Thank you so much, as always, for listening. Subscribe on iTunes. Hit us up on Spotify. We're also on YouTube, so you can see KG in all her glory as the producer. But thank you so much to Dina, Furker, KDO, KG, for all your help on this show. This has been yet another edition of the Business Social Podcast. My name is David Brickley. It's all been powered by STN Digital.